Hi folks, well we're still doing firewood for the winter, and I'm here at one of my smaller fields. It's basically a junk field. It's full of weeds and so on. It's just too small for the farmer to bother with. It's only about an acre. But along the edge of this field there were a lot of trees growing. As you can see, there are two huge dead northern ash there. This is the same field where I harvested that previous firewood from the previous video. So I've got two more trees to take here. I don't know exactly how solid they are yet, but I'll get to that. And we'll see. I think they're still going to be fairly good because they're still standing. They haven't fallen over yet. And that'll be a lot of good already dried firewood ready to burn. Now to get there, I've got to get through this jungle. So my first move here is going to be, I'm going to take my trimmer with the chainsaw blade attachment on the front, the brush cutting blade, and I'm going to cut a path down through there. So I'll get that started for you. You can watch that for a little bit, and then we'll get, when I get the tree prepped ready to go, we'll continue the video at that point. Okay, we're ready to start trimming our path. Takes a little bit to get this thing primed and ready to run, and this blade is getting pretty worn. I've sharpened it a few times but hit a few rocks, so soon time to change it. Okay, well, as you can see, I have a bit of a path cut down there. I got to go down further. I won't make you watch the rest of that, but that's the plan. I got to widen it out a bit because once I drop the trees, hopefully I can back the truck right down there to load up, so I don't have to try to carry my rounds up the hill here. It is on a bit of a slope, so that's the plan. I'm going to keep at it, and I'll come back to you when I'm ready to start cutting. Okay, well, I've notched the front. I started to cut the back. It's a little uneven, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to drive my, whoops, sorry about that. I'm going to drive my splitting maul, that darn cap, I'm sorry, I always have trouble with that. Drive my splitting maul into the back like a wedge to help push it forward like this. I don't have a lot of room there. It was a jungle to try to get in this far, but the center wood is solid, so I'm not worried about it splintering. It will topple. I just got to get it. It's going to go in the right direction because it got some balance issues up there. But we'll see what happens, and I'll come back to you. I don't think I'll try to, well, we'll see what happens. Okay, well, let's see what happens. Couldn't be without this when I'm dropping trees, especially if they're tough. It works like a perfect wedge. It's a little tricky. Had to fool around a lot with it. I'll walk you down and see it closer. The top is pretty well junk, but the trunk is all solid wood, so there's a fair amount of wood in there to get. So let me see here. I'll show you where we are. I know you couldn't see the stump when I was cutting because there's still too many weeds here, but this is what it looked like. It broke in pieces, of course, when it fell. But there's an awful lot of weight to this thing yet. And down and through there, you got a lot of good wood, I think. I won't know until I cut it all up. And even this stuff that isn't perfect will burn somewhat. It won't give me the BTUs I want, but it's not bad for fill in or to get fires started. At any rate, I hated to waste this whole tree, so I'll come back to you after things are kind of cut up and I'm getting ready to load. So thank you for watching so far and being patient with me. It just I just couldn't take a normal cut with it. For one thing, it was too big for my saw. I couldn't make one swipe behind like I'd like. And the way those branches were, I wasn't 100% sure it was going to go this way. That's why I used the wedge. And then what I ended up doing was I did a few what they call plunge cuts. Instead of cutting from behind, I cut in from the side and tried to get it that way, trying to stay behind the main hinge because I wanted it to hinge forward, not backwards, of course. But it worked. It fell just about where I wanted it to, right here where I've cleared out. I don't need to clear much brush out to work here to cut it, which is a big plus. And like I said, there's still a lot of wood here that is usable. That kind of stuff up there is junky, but I'm not worried about that. But the rest of this will do. I mean, I still have that other big one to get, but as you can see, it's a jungle in there, and it's all that multiflora rose stuff and wild honeysuckle and grapevine mixed in and other kinds of vines. So it is absolutely miserable to try to cut that out, no matter what kind of equipment you're using. So, but that's what happens when you neglect a field for years. But at any rate, I'll be back to you. Well, as you can see, I've started to cut it up. is probably going to be at least 2 truckloads, and it is fairly solid in the middle. It's not A quality wood, but it will give me BTUs, and this is especially good to use like here in the fall when it's not so cold, or in the spring when it's warmer but I still want a little heat, because that way I don't need to use the really good oak or cherry or other hardwoods. Right now I have some of that blue beech from last year, and that's something I really don't need to be burning yet. I can save that for later when it gets colder, because that burns very well. Now, a couple things I just wanted to mention too, just for information about how I do things. I've learned when I'm out in the woods like this to take moldable saws with me. Now I have my smaller Echo there that I'll use for the smaller pieces. It goes quick and easy. It's easier to manipulate. Your arms don't get as tired with it. And then I have an older, steel Farm Boss, a 290. That's got a 6-inch bar on it. That was a gift given to me, so as a used saw, and that works very well too. It's got a lot of power. I could probably put a bigger bar on it, use it as a main saw, but it's a little older, so it's a bit heavier than my main saw here, the one that I typically use, and that's my Steel MS271. This is the newer model of the Farm Boss, and that has an 18-inch bar on it. And that's my main cutting saw. The Farm Boss, I think you can go up to 20, but I think that it'd be a bit underpowered to handle a bar that big. Now with a tree this size, and you can see the size of it with at the base there. Now remember the bar's 18, and figure another, I don't know, probably another 18 from the saw housing to the end of the handle. So you can see how big this tree was, and what it took to get down. And one thing I do want to mention, just a safety factor that I learned, when you have a dead tree like this, you need to make sure that it is solid enough to be able to cut safely. Now I did a couple cuts in. I did the notch on the front, and when I was cutting into that, I felt that I was cutting solid wood, maybe not right around the outside, but within an inch or so I was hitting solid wood. So I figured, okay, I don't need to worry about it splintering, and that the center would be able to support its weight, so it would fall normally. As I was cutting through it, I felt the same thing when I was cutting. It wasn't just going right through like a hot knife through butter, so I knew I had solid wood there. A number of years ago, people that we knew had some land behind their house with trees, and we were looking for some firewood. At that time we weren't here, and there was this huge oak tree. I mean, it was completely dead, but huge. It must have been at least 3 feet in diameter. And I thought, man, look at all that firewood. It still had most of its branches, up near the top. It was one of those trees that had grown in the woods, so it didn't have any real low branches, just the high ones. And I thought, boy, I'd love to be able to cut that down and harvest probably 3-4 cords of firewood out of it. Well, what I ended up doing, I think I used my splitting maul. I don't think I had an axe with me at the time. I wanted to test the soundness, and I took a good swing with the splitting maul into it, and it went right into the trunk. Now somewhere in that tree there was a hinge that was still holding, of good wood that was holding it up, otherwise it would have collapsed on its own weight. But because it was that far gone, I had no way of knowing that, and the last thing I needed was a tree that, instead of toppling over when I cut it, that it just crumbled and fell straight down because of the gravity pulling it down. It would have dropped that whole thing on me, and all the branches and things. Some of the branches were, I don't know, maybe 10 inches a foot thick that were up high, so if that came down on top of me, helmet or not, I'd have been dead. So I passed on it. I wasn't going to take a chance on it. It was just too far gone. If I had maybe gotten there, 10 years earlier, it would have still been more solid, and it would have been a great tree, but I didn't want to take the chance, and I'm glad I didn't. So with this one, I knew this was pretty much dead. It just had a little bit of bark here left on the bottom of the top. You can see all the rest of the bark was stripped off of here, or shedded, eroded off. So I didn't know. But what I ended up doing, like I said, was I did some exploratory cuts, and when I realized that, okay, It's still fairly solid in the middle. It should fall normally, and that's what ended up happening. Now I did have to fool around a little bit with the wedge to get it to fall the way I wanted it. Partly, like I said, was because it was just too wide for my saw. I couldn't make just one back cut and go straight through, and I still wasn't sure. There had a couple branches, big branches, leaning a couple different directions, so I wanted to make sure it didn't fall backwards on me. I didn't have a whole lot. You can see all the brush here. I didn't have a whole lot of clearance around. I don't like to do this. I like to have a whole lot more escape room, shall we say. When it did fall, I just went over there, and I was a good, I don't know, 8-10 feet away from it, and I saw that it was toppling away from me. So, and I knew that it wasn't going to what they call barber chair, where the hinge doesn't completely release when it falls. It hangs up on the hinge, and when the tree falls, the main trunk actually kicks backwards. That's a good way to get killed. I knew it wasn't going to do that. I knew when it started to snap and crack that it was just going to break right off and fall, and that's what it did. So you just have to be very careful. Don't do anything foolish. Don't take too many chances, and you can do this safely, and it's a great source for free fuel. This wood would just hang here for maybe another 10 years till it finally collapsed. You can see there are other branches that had fallen off of it already, and from this other tree here, this one might even be a little more farther gone than this one. I don't know. I'll have to see if I still want to try to get that. As you can see, it's still in the midst of the jungle, but it will give me plenty of firewood, and it's just northern ash. It's another one of these that the emerald ash borers have killed, and it just would have rotted here, so I can make use of it. And the animals, I'm sure, will find other trees to live in. There was nothing major living in here as far as I know, other than maybe a bunch of ants. I'll see that when I split it. But I'll tell you what, if you have chickens, bringing firewood home with ants is a smorgasbord for them. I've done that already. I've been splitting wood and split it open. Oh, a whole bunch of carpenter ants. Well, all I have to do is grab a hen or two and bring her over, and oh, she just goes to town because they love them, and it's easy pickings for them. So if you have some, you don't want to get the ants in your wooden buildings, of course, because they destroy wood, but if it's out where the chickens are, it's a huge feast for them. So at any rate, I'll do some cutting up of pieces here to show you yet. Just to demonstrate, and then we'll wrap this video up. I know it's kind of dragged on. I wish I had better editing capability to cut out parts that aren't necessary, but that's beyond my technical ability yet at this stage in my production career with YouTube. So sorry about that. Always feel free to skip forward if you need to through the videos. I won't be offended, of course. I'm just doing the best I can to get them up online. So again, I'll cut a little bit and then I'll end the video. So I want to thank you now for watching, for liking, for subscribing. Hit the notifications bell, and we will keep putting out content of living out in the country on a shoestring. Thanks again for watching. Okay, oh, by the way, the reason I bring the 3 saws, that way if one gets bound up or I hit the dirt with it, I can go to another one. Also, I don't need to bring extra gas because I've got 3 full tanks, and usually I can get at least a pickup load of wood out of, oh, maybe 2 gas tanks, 1 gas tank, depending on how much cutting there is. So, at any rate, I'll set some of this up for you just as a demonstration. These weeds here are absolutely miserable. We've got plenty of briar bushes mixed in with them too. I'm trying to cut about 16-inch wedges so they fit in the wood stove. Okay, well I'm going to keep cutting. So I figure I have a good sized pickup load. And I'll back the truck down to where the camera is thereabout and load them all up. Again, thank you for watching.